And in this, I would love to just explore a little bit the role and what we've discovered around the role of generative dialogue and deep generosity in terms of ways of being with each other as collectives across the and beyond the continent. And so, just briefly, a quick introduction to Africa Voices Dialogue. Africa Voices Dialogue was co-founded by a number of us as co-partners, co-founders. Karima was there as well at the beginning of our journeying into what wants to become here. And it has been founded around a very, very specific intention, and that is to hold and be a space where Africa's voices are seen, heard, and loved. And that is the sole reason that we exist. What emerges out of that as a condition and a way of being has been absolutely incredible. But what we always come back to is in everything that we are doing, are we creating space where voice is seen, heard, and loved? So we're slightly evolving, in fact, in this year, because we really are starting to notice that this intention to co-create authentic belonging and to activate potential, where we initially started looking at educators, learners, and communities across the African continent and beyond, we're increasingly noticing that this is work for anybody who cares about human thriving. And human thriving, we have a very particular focus on Africa. We believe it is a very unheard continent with an enormous gift to give. And so this work becomes a space where we can create authentic belonging for each other and activate potential for these kinds of communities, such as we're experiencing today. And the principles of our community are that we really are less about expertise. We're not so much interested in what you cognitively know as in what your lived experience has been and how you are perceiving the world and how the world is moving through you. That every voice matters. We often have infants, young people, children, 7-year-olds, elderly people, people who come from highly illiterate communities. Every voice matters because what gets created when we listen to each other's voices just transcends and becomes so much larger than we are. And we start to be able to sense the system we are part of and step into meaningful learning. So our growth has been really remarkable. We have we always say we are impecunious, but we have the most unbelievable social capital. So this magnetic force of what happens when we create these spaces is that we draw community and we draw each other in, and what becomes activated is a learning ecosystem. We connect with others like yourselves, each of you, who are doing similar work, creating spaces where human beings and their voice matters. And the more than human world's voice matters. So I won't be too long here, but really just to touch on what everybody in this room knows, that there is a critical need for understanding what it takes to move towards systems of love, care, and belonging, not as a soft and fuzzy, but as a critical reformat of how we are choosing to be together in the world. There is a crisis of care and belonging, and care is not just something that makes us feel nice. It is a deep relational understanding that's supported by intentional gifts to each other of generative listening, attention, vulnerability. We need to be teaching what it means to be able to care. Care is, I saw an article last week, being recognized as its own critical form of intelligence. Our capacity to care is, in fact, the foundation, the humus, the soil condition out of which our capacity to thrive grows. And so generative dialogue for us has become, because we are virtual, but whether we are virtual or physical in our connecting of people, what we are finding is this capacity to be in generative dialogue is itself an experience and a teaching and a learning of what it means to care for one another as a transformative process. Sorry, slide stuck. All right. So we know there is palpable crisis of care and belonging. We're seeing it in every moment of polarization happening in the world. We know our human beings around the world are disconnected, isolated, sad. And if we cannot start to practice this level of care and to deeply engage with one another, we have to do this work in order to have a more stable position from which to engage with the complexities that we are facing. So all of our work is founded on the African philosophical way of being, which is known as Ubuntu, but fundamentally it recognizes that I am because you are. We belong to one another. We find our meaning in one another. And so our deepest intention towards a higher purpose is to co-create belonging and to create it as an ongoing practice and experience with each other. I'll skip that quickly. It's really to move towards here, that understanding that our capacity to care shapes how we are able to interact with each other. It shapes how we're able to make ethical decisions. Our capacity for relational and emotional engagement becomes what shapes our moral development. Teaching this to our children and holding our children within spaces that feel like this. This is what gives them their deepest core, their deepest sense of moral self, of being human in a world where we matter to each other. And in this way, pedagogy, as a fancy word, is not about teaching and sharing information. It is about learning how to be together and learning what our ways of being together are and how our ways of being together in turn activate our capacity for deep, meaningful learning, learning not as a function of what we have to achieve, but as a fundamental core capacity of our humanity. Human beings are learning creatures. It never stops. This is not schooling. It's not higher education. It is across our lifespan. Generative dialogue, creating these spaces of dialogue and generosity, create communities that are connected through care and belonging, and build trust, mutual respect, and authentic engagement. And this becomes the condition through which we can start to learn well and beautifully. And so just briefly, thinking about what we have done in Africa Voices Dialogue in terms of seeking to grow these communities of care and belonging, is we've articulated a set of very simple principles. They are not clever, they are not fancy, and it is not about the principle. It is about the intent and the commitment to the way of being that underpin these. And so what we work with is the foundational philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu as a practice of knowing that we belong to one another, and the use of generative dialogue. And we use these methods to inspire agency, empathy, and innovation, not only in education systems, actually wherever human beings gather and are held in this way. And our commitment really is in every engagement that we pay attention to each other with an open mind, an open heart, and open will. We drop ourselves out of the space of downloading, just hearing what we expect to hear, the space of debate where we are trying to convince one another, past the space of traditional dialogue where we know that there's something about what each other's worlds have that could actually inform and enrich ourselves, and right down into the space of generative dialogue, which is where we surrender our boundaries and we step out in deep attention to listen wholeheartedly to each other's lived experience. And in that, we drop into the capacity to sense more than ourselves, to sense the system we are part of, and to become part of a collective flow, creative presencing. Our dialogue formats always toggle between a space where we, a little bit like this, a space where we have kind of initial thought provocations, and into small rooms of intimacy where we find each other and where every voice is seen, heard, and loved. I'm nearly done. Thank you so much, Anna. And we always step in with this deep curiosity for what will happen here, and a commitment that we are always interested first in the people and holding people in a process that allows them to be seen, heard, and loved. And we know and we have experienced that this is what unlocks the potential of the individual, of the collective, and of us as a whole. And so just finally, this kind of connection that this way of being, this is something inherent to our continent, to other continents too, but it's something that Africa has to give. It is a profound gift from this continent, this journey to voluntarily replace certainty, judgment, and control with curiosity, compassion, and love. I'm just going to move through here quickly to get to my final slide, which is this one, and just the invitation that there is something beautiful coming from our continent. Please watch this space and engage with this space.